It Happened on the Job, the podcast for relatable conversations with contractors. Sponsored by Goodman Insurance.
Welcome to It Happened on the Job. We are your podcast for relatable conversations with contractors, hopefully bringing a little bit of entertainment to you as well. This is episode 38.
38, geez.
Yeah, getting there.
Yeah, we are getting there. And today for episode 38, we have Mike Webb with MW Construction Incorporated, the president and CEO and owner and king of his own company. I'm joking because he owns his own company and, whatever. Okay. How you doing, Mike?
Pretty good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate you taking the time with us today.
No worries. I know you guys reached out a few weeks ago, and now we finally hooked up to get this done for you.
I know,
Perfect.
right? Well, very cool. Well, hey, tell us a little bit about your business, how you got started in the business, and when it all began.
I guess for me, I consider myself lucky when I tell people this kind of story. Is I've known I wanted to do construction since I was about 4 years old, or ever since I can remember.
Wow.
I've got pretty much all of my family in construction in one way or another through trades and different facets of that. So I actually used to dress up as my dad, as a superintendent or carpenter for Halloween when I was 4 and 5 years old.
Wow.
So by going through that and just my dad was a general contractor here in town, commercial. And so I grew up running around job sites.
Okay. And
pretty much that's all I wanted to do. No matter what, my dad told me, don't do this, do something else. This is what I wanted to do. So
well, it probably drove that a little bit harder, was that your dad telling you not to do it probably made you want to do it a little bit more, right?
I think he knew what he was doing. Yeah. So at 16, I picked up a broom and started pushing brooms and shovels and cleaning up job sites because I was working for the company my dad was working for. General contractor. A, he didn't want me doing it, so he thought he could break me and give me all the crap that everyone hates. And then B, under 18, you can't use power tools or operate equipment or anything like that for insurance reasons. So they tried breaking me for a couple of years and it didn't work.
Just made you harder, I guess, huh?
Yeah. So I graduated high school, got a set of nail bags for graduating and got put to work and went to Fresno State. And so I got a construction management degree from Fresno State, all the while working for that same company from the time I was 16 till graduating, and then went to work out for that company after graduating. So to say I've got a wide range of experience, I've literally done it from pushing the broom to pouring concrete, framing, estimating, superintendent. I've pretty much touched it all.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
And so what do you guys do now?
So I'm a general contractor. I started my own business. It'll be 1 year next month. I bounced around a handful of companies. I left that company with my dad. That was back in 2009. That was the bottom of the bottom. Everything crashed.
Mm-hmm.
They held on to us as long as they could. And then after that, I kind of bounced around. I did a year or two here, a year there. And then I did 6 years for another company where I was running that, and then realized that I wanted to go out on my own and do my own thing and my own way. So July of 2019, I stepped out and started this, which is general contracting, mainly commercial, industrial, that kind of stuff. And then I play around with houses every now and again when the client's right and the timing's right.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you say commercial industrial, are you doing like ground up new stuff? Or are you doing TI work, or what do you guys kind of focus
Both.
on?
Yeah.
Both? Yeah.
I've got 3 ground up buildings going right now, and we've got 3 or 4 TIs in different phases. A couple are wrapping up this week, a couple started this week, and then we've got both bidding right now, both ground up and TIs. So it's kind of a good mix of both.
Yeah, and from a labor standpoint, are you guys subbing out a lot of that stuff, or do you guys employ a labor force that does specific work for you?
So I sub out probably 99% of everything.
Okay.
With being a general contractor, it's tough to have your own labor force. If I wanted to have a concrete crew or a framing crew, I can't really take that framing crew and go sub to other guys.
Right.
They're pretty much your guys. So if I had a crew of 5 guys, I got to keep them busy all the time.
Right.
And so I'll go months where I've got solid concrete that I need concrete guys, but I'll go months where I don't need concrete at all. And it's just tough to build a crew and lay them off and build a crew. And it just doesn't work. If the opportunity comes up that I could do that, I might think about it. But for right now, it's subcontracting out 90%.
Yeah, no, definitely probably easier to manage from an employee standpoint, not having to worry about a lot of that stuff for sure.
Oh yeah.
Well, that way I can leverage everyone else's manpower, and I'm also working close with my subcontractors, seeing what they have coming up and working around their schedules, what's going to work for both of us. So,
and I'm sure you've gotten to a point where you've developed relationships with specific contractors that you like to use rather than just kind of bouncing around. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a core group of guys in every trade. I try to have like 1 or 2 heavy hitters in every trade because, it's a business and they work for other people, and I got to respect that. So my electrician might be just buried, and he'll come out and tell me, hey, I cannot get to this one. I'll bid it if you need me to, but I can't do the job. And I say, yeah, I appreciate that. And I got to move to the next guy.
Yeah. So is that bidding process, have you kind of streamlined that a little bit for that reason, or how does that process work for you?
It changes daily, I would say, only because the way we're going to attack projects depends on what the project is. There's certain subs that I want to use that guy, and almost regardless of what his price is, I know he's the guy for the job, versus another job that's simple and easy, but I still want to use that guy because I don't want to go talk to 5 electricians for a $2,500 job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it kind of varies. And so I'll sit down with my estimator and we'll talk the job out. Hey, here's how I'm seeing it. Here's how he sees it. And then we will put together a bid list. All right, let's call these guys. Hey, I just talked with this electrician and he's buried, so we're not even going to bother him with this one. We're going to go to these 2 guys. So it's a case by case basis.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So you said you had an estimator. What does your structure look like from an employee standpoint?
So I've got a full-time estimator. He's been with me about 5 months. I ended up hiring about 4 people about a month before the COVID-19 deal happened.
Oh man.
And so it was crazy. I had 2 of the guys, basically they're twiddling their thumbs looking at me like, what are we doing here? And I said, look, there's a bunch of stuff going on right now. I just need you guys to hang with me, hang tight. I got work coming. I just have to get through all this other stuff to get you in the ball game.
Yeah.
So over the last 3 months, I think it was a blessing in disguise. Everything slowed down, which gave me the opportunity to focus with the guys individually and get that kind of detail together. And so everyone knows what everyone's doing. Before It was just kind of, everyone was going,
all hands on deck,
all for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've streamlined with my estimator now and how we bring a project in and what it looks like and what we're going to go through. Hey, I want him to review it for about a day, and then we're going to sit down and go over it. Same thing with me. If I'm going to estimate the project, I'm going to review it for a day and go over it with him so he knows where I'm standing with my side. So I've started writing the protocols of when a job comes in, how we estimate it, get it through our system, and then what that protocol is to get it out of the office and into the field with the superintendent, what information they're going to get. They've had that input of here's what I want and here's what I need. And so we've curtailed our information flow from the office to the field. So we've got myself and an estimator in the office. I kind of wear every hat imaginable, but we'll roll the information out to the superintendents. We don't have PMs or admins just yet. We're still building towards that, but our projects aren't big enough just yet. We got some in the pipeline that it's going to warrant that, but right now, the $1 million to $2 million jobs just doesn't warrant having the project manager and superintendent and the engineer on it. So we're going through those, and there's some areas where we lack, and we just kind of fill in the gaps, and we're learning as we go.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like, you got to have systems in place in order to grow. And it sounds like you're kind of at that point where, like you said, you're developing a lot of those systems to streamline some of that stuff. And it's really funny. You talk about, how you guys reacted and moved a little bit when the COVID-19 stuff happened. We've talked to plenty of people since then. And it seems like most of these successful companies were either really busy through that time and didn't slow down at all, or the ones that did slow down took that time to work on their business to organize and strategize, rather than just kind of, well, what do we do now, and sit back and wait. So I say that too. Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I say that to point out that you guys are kind of in line with a lot of those successful companies that are taking the time wisely.
Yeah. To throw on that note, we ended up doing both. It was probably the busiest 3 months I've ever had.
Wow.
And it was, I know I have to get this done, because if we're going to make it out alive, I got to get these systems in place.
Yeah.
Because we learn from our mistakes all the time. And so when that happened, and I sent everyone home, I was the first to admit, like, when all this stuff started happening, I laughed it off as a joke. I'm like, yeah, you're kidding me. We're not shutting the company down. This is dumb. And I took it as a joke. I said, fake news, no worries, blah, blah. And then it wasn't until my wife called me and goes, hey, I'm at the grocery store and there's no toilet paper and everyone's running around crazy. Should we be worried? And like, when I got that call, I was like, is this for real? And from that day, it was like, it wasn't things were changing daily. It was changing hourly. All these press conferences were happening. Stuff was getting shut down. So I brought all the guys in. We sat down at the round table and said, look, here's what's going on. I know 2 weeks ago I was laughing at this thing, but this is real. And here's how I'm going to handle it. Everyone go home. So-and-so and so-and-so, you're going to work from home. Send your computer home. I'll set up IT so you can remote in, all that good stuff. Superintendents, if I could ask you to just go to work and go home, I would please ask you to do that, because if you guys get sick, you're staying home for 2 weeks. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yep.
And so we had subcontractors wanting to have the job to themselves, that they didn't want anybody else on the job. So that way their crews would be safe, and we had to respect everybody's wishes. So I basically sent out a blanket email to every subcontractor on all of our jobs, owners, and all of my staff, and says, look, here's my stance. Here's what we're doing about it. If you guys aren't comfortable with it, no fault of your own, do your thing. But everyone's got to be safe and move forward. So we did that, which slowed things down in that sense. So that gave me time to work on the business. But on the other sense, we had jobs coming out of the woodworks that they were saying, hey, this whole building shut down because everyone's working from home. We want you in here to tear this place apart, put it back together. So it was all, just hitting from all sides. So it was 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. for quite a while.
What was that time frame between when you took it seriously to when that, because it sounds like you had at least a reprieve to kind of figure things out, reorganize, streamline maybe a little bit with some of your guys. What was that timeline between when everything shut down to when you were running around with your hair on fire and trying to keep these systems in place?
Honestly, maybe a day or two. What I thought was going to happen was like the whole world shut down. Everyone was going to be quarantined to their house, like full on shutdown, can't go anywhere.
Right.
What we got instead was most people, please stay home. Here's the people that can work, which ended up being quite a bit still.
Yep.
And so for me, I was thinking that supply yards are going to get shut down. We can't get any of our materials. I mean, we weren't going to be able to do anything. So I went out and just bought a boatload of material for jobs I knew I had. And my guys, we were all hooked up to trailers and going everywhere and buying drywall, buying lumber, nails, paint, all kinds of stuff, and stockpiling it. And we're like, all right, we're going to go work at these places. We'll sneak out of our house and, get in there. And we had all these plans to covertly work in case we got shut down.
Yeah.
And none of that happened. So we're sitting on all this material and none of that happened because construction was deemed essential.
Yeah.
Right.
So that didn't plan out because I had all kinds of plans to do stuff at the house. I was going to do, all kinds of things. Didn't work. So my window of opportunity ended up being after my kids went to bed at 8 o'clock, I would work on the computer until 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night. That was when I kind of shut everything else out and worked on business things and came back the next day. Here's what I typed out last night. What do you guys think? And just kept chewing that up every night.
Grinding.
Yeah.
So what's the pipeline look like now? As we're kind of quote unquote coming out of this?
Projects that postponed I would have never thought would have postponed. And there's projects that would have never thought they would have went. So there's no rhyme or reason who did what and why.
Right.
But there was definitely some postponement, and there was jobs that filled those gaps, which I'm thankful for. So the pipeline is filled up for jobs that are going to start here in the next 60 days. I'm going to be honest and say I'm shorthanded. And then for the 6 month and 12 month outlook, right? Well, I can't say 12 months. I got a couple projects out that far, but not as much as I would like. So probably from here for the next 12 months, I'm pretty well buried. But after that, it's when it's starting to open up, and there's stuff always trickling out, and you don't know how well those projects are going to come in. Just doing a budget today, they could cancel tomorrow, or they could fire up. Okay, let's do this in 6 months. So
yeah,
it's still out there. It's still busy. My bid list is full.
That's good.
Yeah, that's great.
So from a job standpoint, are there specific builders, developers, owners that you're doing most of your work for, or are you just out there kind of for anybody and everybody to take a look at you?
I would say I'm selective a little bit. I'm not just going to bid every project. If I bid everything and got everything, there's no way I could manage it. And my reputation means a lot to me. And so I wouldn't want to have 25 jobs running and I only see 3 of them a week. I like to get on every one of my jobs. So at this point, I've got 6 going. It's quite a bit. And as I get my systems in place and become more efficient, we'll take on more. The last thing I want to do is tell somebody no. So it's a fine line. I do have some developers and some architects that I've been working with for quite a while, and they've been really good to me. And I'm open with them, 100% open. If they come to me with a project, I'm going to flat out tell them, I cannot get to that one. But if you can buy me this much time, I can do it. Or they're going to push back and say, look, we really want you on this job and it's going to start. What can you do? And all I tell them is, I will do it. I'll get it figured out. So those are the things that push you to build and go further. So, but I don't really want to take the phone call from hey, I want to remodel my kitchen. Do I do it? Absolutely. Do I do it for the right people? Absolutely. So I've got 3 of those in process right now, just because they're good people. I work with them and I want to help them. I am somewhat selective right now.
So when you talk about being selective on the commercial side, what does that look like? What kind of jobs are you looking for? What kind of jobs are you trying to avoid? As you're trying to be selective there.
Realistically, I'm just selective with my residential stuff because it's so time consuming. What I can do if I did a ground up house, a custom home that takes 12 to 18 months, well, that same dollar size project on the commercial side, I can do in about 8 to 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just because I grew up in commercial, so that's just my bread and butter. I've known it since I was 16 pushing the broom. So I've seen every, version of it. And on the commercial side, things are just so much more streamlined obviously with your finishes. You get LVT, you get sealed concrete, you get carpet tile. Which one do you want? There's not a whole lot of differences.
Not a lot of design.
Any color you want.
Yeah.
I mean, designers are really good with what they are working with, because in the commercial world, we have a lot more codes we have to follow with ADA and all the other stuff. So they don't get as intricate as a custom home would get. So I'm not really that selective on the commercial side, because I know that I can get in and out. And I know if I get in a jam, I'll pull my boots on and I'll go out and do it myself because I've done it. But it's the residential that I'm selective with.
Yeah, and I would imagine the difference too, or some of those differences is just room to work, right? I mean, it's a lot easier working on a commercial building that's quite a bit larger than a house where you're kind of in tighter quarters and having to step over different trades and stuff.
Well, and you probably don't have to deal with, if he's working on the commercial side with actual designers as opposed to the homeowner,
right,
who might change their mind 3 or 4 different times in the span of a day. Gosh.
Well, that still happens with a designer.
Yeah, you're right.
Not by the designer's fault, but the homeowner's still going to, I work with a designer here in town that she does commercial and residential. And our pace that we do a commercial project and our pace that we do a residential project is just 2 completely different scenarios. And no matter how hard we work on it and how organized we are, there's just a night and day difference between how fast we want to get. We got commercial projects where working in multi-story buildings, and you drop a hammer and the guy below you is going to call the owner of the building and complain that you're making too much noise. So we got to deal with working at night, or tiptoeing around and starting at 5 o'clock in the morning doing the heavy stuff. And so there's challenges with the commercial side as well. It's almost like you're working in a house. Sometimes you got to be quiet even though you're literally tearing out a wall, but
right.
That's just what we got to deal with.
There's no handbook on how to tear out a wall quietly, huh?
No.
So talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges you face on a day-to-day basis, running the business. What are some of the biggest hurdles you have to clear, consistently, or the challenges that you face?
Making a plan, and then that plan actually working. To no fault of your own.
That's very honest of you.
Yeah.
So we'll sit here with my, superintendents, my estimator. We put this schedule together. We put this plan. Here's who's going to, do what, and we make it all great. And we put it on paper, and everyone's like, "Yeah, that's what's going to work." And then we start calling the subcontractors, and you throw one wrench out, and the whole thing falls apart because everything is linked together. And it's not their fault. They're busy and they don't know our plan until we tell it to them, but we can't figure out our plan until we figure it out. So we've got that. So it's basically making a plan like 6 times, and you've got option A through Z. And it's like lately we're operating on Z because
right.
every other plan didn't work.
So many contingency plans. Yeah.
Yeah. We're having a real hard time getting through the city and the county with planning and permits and stuff like that because they're operating
remotely.
Right limited.
Yeah.
Yeah, very limited. So that's throwing a wrench in it. So we can't just get a permit today and call the guys tomorrow and expect them to start. So we try and talk with the city and the county, say, "Hey, when do we think?" "Oh, you know what? We're thinking 2 to 3 weeks." So we set our plan A for 2 to 3 weeks. We can get things moving. Well, 5 weeks later, we're on plan Z. We're going, what the hell are we going to do? So that's realistically the biggest thing I deal with is creating the plan 6 or 7 times. Like, here was the best one, and here's what we ended up with.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably going to continue, especially with, where we're at with this whole COVID issue and where, from what you were saying before, this influx of business that you're going to be getting and receiving and currently doing already over the next, 12 months or so. I mean, gosh, I guess the good thing that's going to come out of this is, you're going to get really, really good about putting multiple plans together.
Yeah, show must go on no matter what. So.
Right.
Yeah. So let's kind of switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about the relationship between you and the subcontractors that you work with. Maybe speak to a little bit of the process of, how you got to a point where, you got a few guys that you trust, like what that, vetting out process looked like and the relationship that you have with them on the job and how all that works.
Yeah. I mean, I've got almost 20 years in the business. And so there's a lot of guys that were right alongside me. They were metal stud framers. They were out there, cutting and working out in the field while I was sitting there cleaning up their mess. And fast forward 15 years, they own their company and I own my company. So there's that camaraderie that I kind of grew up with those guys, so to speak. And then you've just run across guys like one of my best subcontractors, an electrician. I consider them really good friends of mine now. And I walked up to a job walk 5 years ago, and I'd never heard of him before. And I saw him at the job walk. And so I said, "Hey, would you mind giving me a bid?" He's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll give you a bid." Well, I didn't use him on that job, but I got a bid from him. And I'm like, okay. So I bid him out again and again. And I finally started using him. And now I almost use him exclusively. So it's relationships you build, just like a building. You put it together one day at a time. Any new guy that I come across that says, "Hey, I want to do your work," absolutely, no problem. But he's going to start with a small job because I'm not going to give him a multi-million-dollar job and find out he's only got 2 guys. So, we'll start him off with the small TIs, and I want to feel him out and see how he's going to react with how we do our things, because there's certain subs that just don't work well with how we do things because they're used to how they do things. And got to respect that. So it's just building a relationship from the ground up, basically.
Yeah, no, I think obviously that's the smartest way to go, especially if you can get with guys that you trust and you can use them almost exclusively, like you were talking about there. I have to imagine along the way there have been some hiccups or some faux pas with some subcontractors. How do you kind of manage that process as far as making sure that everything's being done the way that you guys expect it to be done?
It happens. We got, we're playing with millions of dollars sometimes. We're playing with guys, families, and I wouldn't say playing, but people's livelihoods are on the line sometimes. So a mistake could cost you your job.
Right.
And so there's times where guys are out in the field and there's pressure and communication. Somebody drops the ball, kind of they're doing too many things at once, and there's just a big blow up because somebody calls somebody out. I'm actually going through that exact scenario on a job right now with my superintendent and one of my subcontractors. They just didn't see eye to eye. They just didn't get all the information back and forth. No fault to either one of them, but it wasn't a good deal. Started yelling at each other, all that good stuff. And so I've been there. I mean, I've lost my temper. We all have. And so I talked to each one of them individually, sit them down, and basically told them both, I don't care what happened. What are you guys trying to solve? Like, what's the issue? And not personal issue, like he said
Right.
this to me. What's the job issue? You need this. What do you need? And when do you need it? So I went and solved that first, and then went back to the guys. Hey, here's what we're going to do. That's done. Job's taken care of. Now, what happened? Did you not get him something? Did he not say something? Well, he said something and then he didn't do it. And so I said, look, guys, we got to work together. You're going to finish this job, and we've got more jobs that subcontractor's on. So you guys are going to have to figure it out. And, apologize, suck it up, but we're here to work. And it happens in construction. I mean, I learned that from my dad. I would work with my dad, and then I lived at home with my dad. So I would get chewed out for making a mistake at work. And I would go home, hanging my head, and I'd walk in the door, and he's already at home. And I'm thinking, I'm going to get chewed out again. And he's like, hey, you want to go dirt bike riding this weekend? I'm like, what in the world? And so I learned that, he left it out there on the field. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. So I learned that at a young age, to just shut it off. And there's certain times where it's tougher to slough that off, but you just got to get past it. I don't think anybody maliciously means to do that. And if they do, they don't work for us anymore. And, but I haven't hardly run across something like that. It's just a misunderstanding that got too far, and then we just kind of rein it back in, shake hands, and get on to the next one.
Yeah, I think that's the short-sightedness is probably the best way to operate there, especially from a business standpoint. You want to burn bridges or lose any relationships over stuff like that.
Well, and I think for that person, you realize, okay, it's strictly related to the job. It's not a personal issue, and we can get it done. I think, there's some trust that's built there as a result. What, you mentioned before, just with this whole coronavirus thing, that you guys are looking at a ton of work coming up. What are, and you might have answered this already in terms of some of the difficulties in terms of making a plan, but what are some of the systems that you, or maybe some processes that you're thinking to either put in place or that are currently in place to kind of help deal with that influx of work that's coming?
Over the last, 5 or 6 years, I was kind of operating as a one-man band type of deal, doing too much and not hiring people.
Right.
So instead of hiring somebody, I would work 16 hours a day.
Ugh.
And then I would hire someone and work 12 hours a day. And then I'd hire someone and work 14 hours a day. It was just, I'm a workaholic. So I did everything myself. So everything was in my head or on my computer. So when I started my company, I told myself, I don't want to do that again. I don't need to do that again. I need to use other people's time efficiently to be successful and to grow. I could only get so big if I did everything myself.
Yeah.
So getting my information out to my guys has been the biggest thing. It was the toughest thing for me to do, and it was also the most rewarding thing for me to do. It was just 3 or 4 weeks ago. We did not have a job board in our office. And I would talk with the guys and they were kind of feeling like we didn't have any work coming up and what we had on our plates was all we had. And their outlook of the company was like, hey, are we going to be okay? And they hit me with that question like, about a month ago. And I'm like, you guys don't know what's coming, do you? And they're like, no, you don't tell us. And I went, you know what? You're absolutely right. So we got a job board up and I got 3 columns. I got the columns that those are the jobs in the field going right now. I got the column of jobs we have bid and we're waiting for them to come back and tell us the job's ours or let's get started. So they're in the pending stage. And then there was the column of bids. Like we got to bid all this stuff that's coming up. And I list all that stuff out and they're looking at me like, where the hell did all this come from? And I just pointed, I said, it's half of these jobs I haven't told you guys about yet because it's still in the infant stage and I don't know where it's going to go. But you might as well know about it. And who knows? Fresno's a small town, so everyone knows somebody or, has a connection here. So I threw 2 or 3 jobs on the board and a couple of the guys are like, oh, well, I know so-and-so who's over there. I'm like, well, that's a good idea. I put it down. So now they're pushing their contacts to help, feed that job.
Yeah.
So just by doing that, opened their eyes and they went, oh, crap. And I'm like, what's your problem now? And like, we need more guys. And I went, yeah, you're right. We do need more guys. So we opened up and we're looking to hire some more guys right now to fill that need.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we've talked a little bit the last couple episodes about kind of that transparency aspect from a leadership standpoint and how important that is. And you come from kind of that old school. It sounds like, obviously you've been around for a long time. So you've seen that mentality of, put your head down and grind and don't worry about anything else. But kind of transitioning into the new workforce as it is right now. I mean, a lot of people expect, because we are in such a information overload era with an instant gratification, everybody's seeing everything instantly. That's kind of the way that, most companies are having to go just because that's the way that their employees expect it, to be able to see what's going on and the outlook of the company and what the future looks like and all those things. So,
well, and it's funny. We have talked about that transparency. I never really thought about it in terms of usually it was for
financial,
or issues between employees or employees and management and all that. I've never really thought about it in terms of a morale standpoint, right? You're going like, I don't know what we got. Maybe we'll have a job in 2 weeks, and you're like, no, we've got all of
we
this.
got a ton of work.
Not only do we have all this, but we have all of these kind of waiting in the wings in terms of bidding.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, my estimator told me this week, he goes, I will never ask for, I'll never doubt you again because I've got him loaded with like 4 jobs. He can't see straight. He's going home with headaches. I was like, welcome to my world.
So what are you guys looking for from a hiring standpoint? Are you looking for somebody with quite a bit of experience that can step in and help from a management standpoint, or, like a project management or a standpoint, or looking to bring something
Experience is always required, only because the hours in my day are the hours of my day. I can't make any more hours. So if I hire someone and I got to spend most of my day with them, teaching them what's going on, I'm kind of taking a step backwards.
Right.
So I'm looking for experienced estimator right now because I need to add another estimator to the team. And then I just hired a superintendent. Yesterday was his first day. And so even with somebody with experience, there's the learning curve of here's how we're doing things, here's what I expect, So I've got to spend time with him and develop him into our system. So right now it's superintendents and estimator is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and I have to imagine that what you did in the past, these past few months, as far as getting things on paper and systems and all those other things, is only going to help when you're bringing these new people on. I obviously there's a learning curve and there's some time that it takes when you do bring somebody on, but I have to imagine that would be exponentially higher had you not had a lot of these things in place already.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cool. I mean, what's the future look like for you guys? I mean, how big do you guys think you can get bringing in some people, or how big do you want to get when you're bringing in these people?
Yeah, that's the question. If it's the right people, I mean, I'll just keep going.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's the people that is going to tell me what I can do. Right now, we've got an estimator, we've got 4 superintendents, and I've got a a controller with me. And so with everyone we've got, I've been really, really lucky. And I've told the guys this. I said, look, I lucked out with all you guys because everyone works together really well. All of my guys that I hired, they have the physical background of physically working. You know, one of my guys is a concrete guy. Another guy's a finish guy. Another guy, installed appliances. So he knows when he's going into a job that we cannot scratch anything because that's where he came from. So I kind of gravitate towards those guys that have physical, like I've got a trade behind me. So I told all those guys, when the coronavirus hit, I said, look, we're going to have to pull our bootstraps on and throw nail bags on and get dirty. And every one of them says, let's do it. And we were actually out on the job site having fun because we were working with their bags, building stuff.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of guys that I've been gravitating towards. Not to say if we get into some bigger projects, not to say that we couldn't handle that by any means, but if we start going after like the 7-figure jobs, then, the multi-stories and developments and things like that, we're going to have to bring in some more project manager type. And I've got no problems doing that. And I've worked for companies that had that hierarchy. I've worked for the one-man band, and I've worked for the conglomerate. They've got 30 people on a single job. So I've got the ability to scale. It just, is it the right people, and are the jobs out there to do it with?
Yep. Well, and you don't want to do it too quickly or too irresponsibly either. So
you put yourself in a bad position quickly. Well, Mike, one of the things that we like to ask on the show, kind of as we're wrapping up, is, and you've been in the business for a very long time and have had aspirations toward this business, also a very long time. Wanted to know if you've seen anything that's entertaining, funny, crazy, weird that you've experienced while on a job site of any kind in your many years in the business.
Man, that's a loaded question.
and we've heard quite a bit
pretty often.
I mean, I've heard everything from we've had women that have tried to seduce guys to then to some more clean corporate kind of versions of that. But yeah, anything that jumps out at your mind that you remember.
Yeah, I've got a handful of stories. Well, I shouldn't say a handful. I got a bunch of stories, but some are not suited and some are. And based off the statute of limitations, nobody could come after us for this one. But, and it's nothing. It was crazy. And, looking back, it was pretty scary. At the same time, it was me and my dad working. And so we're tearing apart a box store, gutting this box store, and this furnace store is going to take over. And so I'm the only guy there, and we were ahead of the game. And my dad was the type, he was always pushing the schedule. We got to get this done. So I'm in there doing demo, tearing stuff apart. And that's not out of the ordinary. I do that all the time.
Right.
He shows up and says, hey, that ceiling back there, the owners want to keep it, but I don't want to keep it because it's crap. So I want you tearing that out. They're going to be here at noon. I want that whole thing torn out, and you're taking the blame. And I went, you got to be kidding me. He's like, hey,
thanks,
you just got to take this one for me. And I went, okay, fine. So I start tearing it onto the ceiling. It's an acoustic ceiling, it's the T-bar ceiling. You're probably sitting over your head right now.
Yep.
And so I'm tearing it out, doing my thing. And he shows back up, and he's like, you got to hurry up. These guys are in the parking lot. I said, okay, fine. So I start tearing into this wall, so that way I can get this out faster. Well, case in point of you always hire the right contractor and you make sure they do it right. Whoever put that ceiling in did not do it right. And they attached the last 15 feet of this T-bar ceiling to the wall that I was tearing out.
Oh.
You couldn't see it. You couldn't tell. So all of a sudden, this whole entire ceiling comes collapsing down on me. So as it's falling, I turn and run. And when you turn and run, you're got your arms pumping. So, one arm goes down, one arm goes up. I get out, everything fell to the ground. And my dad's like, yeah, good job. And I'm holding my arm. And the feeling when you hit your head, you itch it and you're not sure if you're cut or not.
Yeah.
And you're like, is there going to be any blood? So I'm holding my arm and I've got that weird feeling in my arm. And I'm like, what the heck? I look down and my arm is filleted open.
Oh.
The ceiling, one of the 4-foot T's of that ceiling came down like a harpoon and I got the scar. I'm looking at it right now. It's literally I would say a third of the length of my forearm.
Oh my!
Dude.
I mean, filleted me wide open. And I'm holding it, and I open my hand. I'm like, oh, shit. So I ripped my shirt off real quick, and I wrapped around my shirt, and I said, Dad, I'm cut. And he's like, hey, we got to get this other part. I go, Dad, I'm
grab
cut
a
bad.
Band-Aid.
And he's like,
I'm bleeding out.
Bad? And he sees the blood, and he goes, what the? And he goes, get off the carpet, because they were saving the carpet. So he yells at me, get off the carpet. So I get over on the wood that we were going to demo out that day. He goes, let me see. And I open it, and his face goes ghost white, and he goes into dad mode. He's no longer like my boss. He's now dad, like, get in the truck. So we didn't wait for the ambulance or anything like that. Hops in the truck, and we take off. He yells at the owners, I'll be back later. So we go in the truck, and now he's blowing through stop signs. I'm like, Dad, relax. But he's freaking out. But while he's blowing through stop signs, he's changing the radio because he didn't like the station. I remember all this, very vividly. And, we get to the hospital and we get checked in. And of course, he calls my mom while we're out there. Because at the time I was 20 years old. I was still living at home. And so I'm still a kid, basically. And I just remember the shitty part about it was they're stitching me up. They gave me all the local. They gave me all the drugs. And I'm sitting there kind of doped up. And it's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning. And he goes, hey, after lunch, I need you to get back to that job. And he was dead serious. And my mom was like, you've got to be kidding me. Nope, I'm taking him home. So I got the half day off. And so that night he comes home. He's like, all right, here's what we're doing tomorrow. And I'm all bandaged up. They told me I had to keep it elevated. I didn't get any arteries. I didn't do any damage. I just filleted myself. They said you were lucky. Didn't hit any tendons. I mean, I just basically cut meat open.
Yeah.
So they gave me my marching orders. It's going to be 2 weeks, blah, 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 all that good stuff. And he's like, all right, I need you back in that job tomorrow. I go, what do you expect me to do? He goes, well, I got 5 labor-ready guys coming, so that way they could do what you were supposed to do, and I need you to tell them what to do. And I'm like, okay, great. So I walked around for a week with my hand basically tied above my head, just pointing and shooting and telling people what they had to do.
It's not a bad gig, though. Yeah. Well, you went from laborer to boss real quick.
Yeah, and finding out that it took 5 guys to do what he was doing all by himself.
Yeah. So that would I've got 100 more that can go along with that story, but that one, because I've got the scar to look down on every day and awesome. See it. But
you're always going to remember that one. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's being Father's Day this weekend. That's a good story for today.
There you go. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
So before we let you go, I just wanted to ask you about your dad. Is he still involved anywhere? Is he retired? Where is he at?
So he's at the company that I worked for since I started when I was 16.
Okay. So he's still there.
He actually is he's retiring in August. So he's got they started that company in 1985. So he's got 35 years working there.
Very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before we let you go, we want to give you a chance to kind of give a shout out or all your plugs, or where the people can find you.
The 2 biggest people I'd like to thank would be, one, my dad. He's the one that pushed me to do what I do. And then the second one would be my wife. She allows me to do what I do. I work a lot of hard hours, and she supports me.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
So those 2 people really help me out. As far as people finding me, I'm here in Fresno, born and raised. Website is mwconstruction.net. And I got signs around town on job sites. I've been around for a long time. People know my name, and hopefully more people learn my name.
Yeah. Awesome. Hopefully. Yeah, we'll get it out there to the people.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for giving me a call and inviting me.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for coming on today. It was truly a pleasure.
Well, happy Father's Day. Have a good one, and we will we'll keep in touch.
All right, take it easy.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, thanks for listening. And if you've made it this far, go ahead and give us a like or 5 stars or whatever means you like us.
Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode, and check out our website for more video content and extras.
While you're there, shoot us a message if you want to be a guest. We'd love to have you on.
Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.